Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host of the Injured List podcast, Brian Scott.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Injured List podcast. I am your host, Brian Scott. As in years past, this episode promises to be informative and educational. By viewing this episode, I promise you'll have an edge over your competition come fantasy football draft day. I can't overemphasize the importance of using all resources when you build your roster. That can't be overstated. I am one of only a handful of experts in this field that I know of that do what I do. So please feel free to follow me, my social media accounts at Injured List Pod on X, the Injured List Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and check out my website where you can contact me directly at www.theinjuredlist.com. Look for me on multiple draft specials as well coming up on that sports podcast network, as well as Fantasy Football Advice Network, where I do regular injury updates and analysis throughout the preseason and the regular season. I'd like to take a moment to thank my sponsors at NeuroGuard Mouthguards, who've been very supportive in my partnership with them. You can find links to discounted products on their site, on my social media pages, and my podcast links, and in the descriptions. Also, I'd like to thank Underdog Fantasy, who has supported our network, that sports podcast network. You can also find some deals from them, including doubling your deposit on up to $100 when you sign up using our code. Finally, SeatGeek, where you can get discounted tickets to your favorite events using our code InjuredListPod. Before we get started, let's hear from our partners at NeuroGuard Mouthguards. Dr. Michael Hutchison has harnessed the latest in neuromuscular dentistry and impact technology to develop a mouthguard that does more than protect. It enhances. NeuroGuard Plus isn't just a mouthguard. By focusing on the jaw's physiological position, it provides an added layer of neuroprotection, significantly reducing the risk of sports-related neurological injuries. All athletes should be using a custom mouthguard designed to their bite position. NeuroGuard Plus was created as a means to maintain your physiological jaw position regardless of your bite. The appliance is designed to optimize your upper-lower jaw relationship to improve your strength, your balance, your oxygen intake, and drastically lower your chance of a concussion. Independent studies have shown that the NeuroGuard Plus will provide you with improvement to both upper and lower body strength. The same improvements were not present with a common mouthguard. Over 6,500 athletes have used the NeuroGuard Plus. Dr. Hutchison is happy to say that the amount of diagnosed concussions is 0.2%. The NeuroGuard Plus offers athletes, coaches, and parents an advantage to keep their players safe on the field. If you or your child actively participates in athletics, they need to be protected from the dangers of repetitive head trauma. Get your NeuroGuard Plus mouthguard today. Click on the link and use code ILPSports for 10% discount on your purchase. All right. Great information there. Great product, NeuroGuard Plus Mouthguards. Reduce your risk of concussion. It's an important topic in the world of football. And that goes for you amateurs, high schoolers, collegiate athletes, professionals, you name it. Now let's get back to the show. Now, let's get into it, okay? If you followed the shows in years past, you know that I've covered a lot of athletes during this pre-draft injury episode over the years. Some, if not most of them, are high-profile names in the fantasy football world. Some of them include, dating back to last year, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Wright, Amarius Mims, Jalen McMillian, Caleb Williams, Blake Corum, Michael Penix, Brock Bauer, Sam Hartman, Trey Benson, Jordan Travis. That's just to name a few from last year. The year before was Kendre Miller, Mohamed Ibrahim, Hendon Hooker, Jackson Smith-Jigba, Kayshon Boutte, Luke Musgrave, Dalton Kincaid. The years before that was Jamison Williams and Derek Stingley Jr. Jalen Waddle and Landon Dickerson back in 2021. In 2020, I included Brandon Ayuk and Zach Moss and Laviska Shenault and Brian Edwards, to name a few, as well as Tua Tagovailoa. So these are just a few of the names that have come up time and time again on weekly in-season injury reports as well. So as I previously mentioned, the importance of injury updates before and during the season cannot be overstated. Now, before we get into this year's draft class, I want to give you all some updates on players injured this past season. So let's dive into them first, starting with football players who had season-ending injuries this past season. And of course, probably number one on this list and everyone's list is Christian McCaffrey. He tore his PCL in Week 10 against the Bills. This caused him to miss the rest of the season. It did not require surgery, but this comes after he had missed the first 8 games due to a bout of Achilles tendonitis that started in the preseason, which caused him to miss a substantial amount of time early in the year. He returned for 4 games before his season was then cut short by this knee injury. So we'll have to see how he bounces back from this. Now, he's had a few years where he has been pretty banged up. He had a couple of years consecutively with San Francisco where he was a stud and did what everybody expected him to do. This year should be no different, assuming he doesn't have any chronic issues pop up like he did last season during the preseason. Number 2 on my list here is Stephon Diggs. He tore his ACL in Week 8, which was a huge fantasy impact. Before the injury, he was averaging like 5.8 receptions and 62 yards a game with 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. You know, he's a little bit older now. He's well into his career. It's going to be difficult for him to bounce back from this. He is likely going to miss most of this season, if not all of it. It takes about 12 to 18 months to fully recover from this ACL. He'll likely be cleared anywhere between 9 to 12 months. But as we've seen in years past with guys at the skill positions, it more than likely will be at least a year. So he may not be back till at least the earliest midway through the season, possibly later. Number 3 on my list is Brandon Ayuk, who I had mentioned was a player I covered when he was coming out of college. He tore his ACL and MCL in Week 7 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, another big fantasy impact here as his season ended prematurely after he had received 25 receptions for 374 yards through those 7 weeks. Another major fantasy impact heading into this season as well, as he is in a similar boat to Stephon Diggs as far as his time frame for recovery. Number 4 on my list is Chris Godwin. He is with the Tampa Bay Bucks. He had a dislocated fractured ankle in Week 7, and at the time of the injury, he had been doing really well, had 50 receptions for 576 yards, which ranked second in the NFL at the time. So this had a major fantasy impact. I expect that he should have a full recovery heading into this season and be ready for the start of preseason. I don't necessarily think this will hamper him too much. He may lose a step, but at his stage in his career, that may not be a huge loss given his skill set. Number 5 on my list, and this again is no particular order of significance, it's just how I kind of went about my list here, is Nick Chubb. This guy has been banged up for most of his career, and his injuries have not been minor, they've been major career-threatening injuries, yet he seems to bounce back time and time again. In 2023, he was coming off of his second major multi-ligament knee injury that required surgery, and he made it back I think it was after 8 weeks or so into last year, and then in Week 15, he broke his foot. So he literally played 8 games this past season. He rushed for 102 times for 332 yards and 3 touchdowns. He looked like he was the Nick Chubb of college, which he seems to always do when he bounces back from his injuries. This injury in particular is certainly not the worst of his injuries, but again, he lost more time. Another year has ticked by on his career. And with all the injuries, eventually they will add up and take their toll on him physically. I don't know how many more lives he has left. He's like a cat. He may have used all 9. All of these injuries have had significant implications for fantasy football managers. Losing key players mid-season can drastically alter team performance, and staying updated on player health and having depth in your roster are crucial strategies for navigating such challenges. The next list I want to talk about is the skill position players that were affected by injuries at some point and to some capacity during last season, but not necessarily season ending. And Christian McCaffrey is on this list as well, as because his season last year was basically split into two. I already mentioned that he had the PCL injury in week 13, but prior to that, he was dealing with this Achilles tendonitis, which sounded like it may have been an Achilles tendon rupture, and then reports came out that it was a chronic issue, it had become inflamed. He ended up missing a lot more time than people thought. He, despite this injury, he was leading the league in almost all the categories. Um, and it's really tough loss for fantasy football owners. It really makes you question whether or not he's worth the high draft pick heading into this year. Number 2 on this list was Puka Nacua. He sustained a PCL sprain to his knee in week 1, which ended up causing a 5-game absence. Upon his return, though, he had a standout performance, multiple standout performances, including 162-yard, 2-touchdown game in week 14. So he looked like he fully recovered from that injury. They were very cautious in treating this, and I think that was a wise move. He was able to return and looked pretty good. In fact, he looked as good as he did a few years ago when he really made his breakout year. Number 3 on this list is Mike Evans, Tampa Bay receiver. He re-aggravated a hamstring injury in week 7, and this caused him to miss several games. Despite this, though, he achieved his 11th consecutive 1,000-yard season, tying an NFL record. And Mike Evans is another one of these players that seems to bounce back time and time again, although in more recent years he has been dealing with multiple soft tissue injuries, the hamstring in particular, which has caused him numerous setbacks. So if you're going to draft him, expect that he will miss some time as he gets further along into his career and well into his 30s as a skilled position wide receiver. We talked about Chris Godwin with the dislocated ankle. I had him on this again, although it did end his season. And the next, these top tier players, they have significant implications, like I said, for football managers. So it really emphasizes, again, the importance of depth and adaptability in your roster. Moving over to the quarterback position, there's some quarterbacks I'd like to discuss. And this is not necessarily season ending or non season ending injuries. But number 1 on the list, Deshaun Watson. Suffered a torn Achilles in week 7, which ended his season. It was cut short due to the injury, which significantly impacted a lot of fantasy managers who relied on him not only as a starting quarterback, but also as a bench quarterback, second stringer, in case your first stringer went down with an injury, which if you had Deshaun Watson as one, suffered the consequences of that. Number 2 was Trevor Lawrence. He was placed on injured reserve in December after dealing with a significant AC joint sprain in his left shoulder, his non-throwing shoulder. This led to the absence during the fantasy football playoffs, which affected a lot of teams that depend on some consistent production out of him, and saw him not really being favorable light within Jacksonville. Number 3 on this list was Anthony Richardson. He missed weeks 5 and 6 due to an oblique injury. He later was benched when he returned as a starter in week 11. His injuries and the benching disrupted his season. It led to a very inconsistent fantasy performance last year, and that was coming off of shoulder AC joint reconstructive surgery the year before, so not good for him. Whether or not he's the starting quarterback heading into this year will remain a question mark. Derek Carr, number 4 on my list, fractured his hand and suffered a concussion in week 14, thus ending his season. The injury removed a very solid, reliable quarterback option from many fantasy lineups during a critical time in the season during a lot of playoff weeks. And so, unfortunately for Derek Carr lovers, you had to suffer through that this past year. Hopefully, he'll bounce back healthy, which I have no reason to think he will not. And then, of course, last but not least, Aaron Rodgers made this list as he missed the entire 2023 season due to a torn Achilles and then returned in 2024. But concerns about his overall mobility and offensive line protection persisted, and he never really had the fantasy impact that many had hoped to see after coming back from his Achilles surgery. His return was met with many fantasy managers evoking much caution, considering his age and his injury history in more recent years. The injuries to these top tier quarterbacks certainly had significant implications for fantasy football managers. Excuse me. Again, the importance of depth and adaptability in your roster. Now, there are some top skill position players with non-season ending injuries, and we touched upon most of these. There's a couple I left out that I wanted to get to. One of them was Isaiah Pacheco. He had a shoulder injury. It caused him to miss weeks 14 and 15. His absence during the fantasy playoffs was a major setback for managers that had relied on him and his consistent production when he is, in fact, in the lineup. And the Chiefs dealt with a lot of injuries earlier in the year and were able to get a lot of guys back toward the end of the season and into the playoffs, and Pacheco was one of them. But by that time, the fantasy playoffs had ended. So for fantasy purposes, it was a pretty significant blow. Chris Olave, he had a concussion in week 12, which caused him to miss the following game. It was a brief absence, but again, it disrupted his momentum during a critical period during the fantasy playoff season. Jahmyr Gibbs, he had a hamstring strain, which caused him to miss weeks 5 through 7. Upon returning, he ended up sharing the backfield duties with David Montgomery, which unfortunately affected his fantasy ceiling. So you have to wonder if he didn't have that hamstring injury, if that would have been the situation. Now, while these injuries were not season ending, they did have notable impacts on the fantasy football outcomes for a lot of managers and rosters. So again, adaptability, depth at the roster in certain positions, especially the skill levels with offensive production, is really important. Now, I want to take a quick break hear from another one of our sponsors, and then we will be back to discuss the 2025 NFL Draft injury analysis and the players to look out for heading into this year's draft.
Fantasy Sports Corp and Underdog Fantasy have teamed up to start your fantasy season off in the win column with Best Ball. What is Best Ball? It's quite simply the easiest way to win. No team management, no trades, no waivers. It's their biggest contest ever and it has only gotten bigger. You simply have to sit and win. You don't even have to set your lineup. Always get your best score every week. Just enter a contest, draft your team, and Underdog will do the rest. What could make this even better? How about free money, up to $100 using our exclusive promo code? Go online now and use the promo code InjuredList to double your deposit up to $100. You tell them Gingerbread sent you. Good girl.
All right, here we go. We're heading into the 2025 draft injury analysis, and now we're going to get started with players to look for in this year's draft, which is right around the corner, folks. Again, tune into my social media channels. I'll be making appearances on multiple shows before and after the draft to give my injury analysis and predictions as to what to look for and what to look out for as you build your fantasy football rosters this upcoming season. So tune in, follow my social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, That Sports Podcast Network, for all your injury updates. The Injured List podcast is the place to be. All right, here we go. So starting out with number one, probably the number one ranked guy on the draft board for many teams, Penn State defensive end Abdul Carter. Now, during the NFL scouting combine, he was diagnosed with a stress reaction in his foot. He opted against surgery, which ended up not allowing him to not only participate in the scouting combine, but also caused him to miss Penn State's pro day. Although he didn't work out for both of these occasions, it didn't really cause his draft stock to slip, which I kind of agree with. He did have a shoulder injury toward the end of the season, which caused him to miss most of the Fiesta Bowl. He got injured in the second quarter, returned to the game, but ultimately didn't finish. And then his Orange Bowl was a game time decision, which I don't even think he played. But, Carter's always been committed to recovery and has always had a presence in the training room and kept himself very healthy. These injuries, both he has recovered from as far as the most recent reports. So I don't see these really affecting his draft stock. Teams like the Patriots and the Giants have expressed a significant amount of interest as they both sit up pretty high on the draft boards. Michigan cornerback Will Johnson, as of April, he was once projected as a top 10 pick, but his stock has declined, mostly due to multiple injuries and limited pre-draft workouts. In September, he had a shoulder contusion. He missed a game against Minnesota because of that. Turf toe has been the biggest concern with him. He had an injury to his toe back in October during a game against Washington, which effectively ended his season. He had a hamstring strain more recently while he was training for the NFL Combine. Uh, Again, this prevented him from participating in Michigan's Pro Day in March. Um, he's been documented as having knee cartilage issues, which apparently they don't think will impact his immediate play, although scouts have expressed concern over the potential long term effects, which I do agree with. Whenever you have knee cartilage issues, that is a major, major red flag. Um, all of these injuries kind of snowball on itself, and they've raised concerns among many NFL teams regarding his durability and long term performance. Um, he also, because of a lot of this stuff, didn't run the 40-yard dash during private workouts, which left a lot of questions about his speed unanswered. You factor in all of these factors and the possibility of him slipping to the mid to late first round or even early second round is a real possibility. And this certainly will be the case as we head into the draft. Now, despite all this, his college performance remains very impressive. I mean, he was a consensus All-American, defensive MVP of the 2024 National Championship game. He's shown amazing instincts and skills and physicality, which continue to keep him on the upside as far as cornerbacks are concerned and have still piqued many teams' interests. But when you look at the medical evaluations, they're not something to be taken lightly. Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo, he has overcome some early injuries in his career and is poised as a promising prospect as we head into the draft. He did sustain a major knee injury in 2022, an ACL tear, which required off-season surgery. He ended up missing the remainder of that season and then experienced some setbacks the following year, which caused him to miss a portion of the 2023 season. However, by 2024, he had returned to full health and he had some standout performances. It's 590 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. He really was able to showcase his potential as a dynamic offensive weapon. And so he shot up on people's draft boards. He had a minor knee issue, apparently a bruise during the Senior Bowl, which led him to skip some workouts at the NFL Combine so he can recover. Whether it was the same knee or not, I'm not exactly sure, but that's always a concern whenever you have an ACL injury and then subsequent re-injuries or setbacks. You have to wonder again about long-term durability here. He's projected as a mid-round pick, mid-round first pick, I believe. Actually, I'm sorry. He's projected to be mid-round, like 4th or 5th round. Whether or not he slips or he gets shot up on draft boards because of his versatility and the fact that he was able to come back from these injuries, we'll have to see. Next up is Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison. He was dealing with a hip injury that he sustained last season, which essentially ended his season. He had a labrum injury that required surgery or in early October. He was at the combine and he did have several medical evaluations. He's now like 5 plus, almost 6 months out from surgery and has been fully cleared, but he did not participate in combine drills. He was getting ready for his private showcase pro day. He had surgery by Dr. Mac Philippon of Steadman Hawkins Clinic in Vail, Colorado, which is a very prestigious institution, and he has been rehabbing in Florida. He's been described as a smooth, easy mover. He's had a history of strong production before this season ending injury in October. He is excellent off coverage, and he's got a fluid pedal and excellent awareness. He understands the down and distance situations. He can close without wasting any movement. He's very, very basically efficient and almost effortless in his ability to cover. So this is a tough injury to bounce back from, especially in hockey players and soccer players. In football, I don't think it's going to really hamper him much. Hopefully, surgery was effective and he's doing well in his recovery. I have not seen reports to suggest otherwise. I think he will be good to go, and hopefully, this won't be a recurring issue for him, as hip labral surgery is not always as reliable as some of the other procedures we do in orthopedics. But at a young age, if everything was treated appropriately, which I have no reason to believe it wasn't, given he went to Stedman Hawkins Clinic again, which is a very, very reputable institution, and by a very reputable surgeon, then there's no reason to think that he won't have a full recovery and be ready to go this year. Next up is Ohio State offensive tackle Josh Simmons. He had a left knee injury. This was a season-ending injury and then subsequent surgery in October. It was recently reported that his injury was a ruptured patellar tendon, which occurred in Game 6. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, said he will be ready for the start of training camp. He's a gifted left tackle prospect. He was having an outstanding 2024 campaign before this injury. He's got excellent size. He's got great movement and balance. He's excellent by all accounts. The main question is going to be his health. You know, when you have an injury like this at this position, it's devastating for a lot of guys. You will certainly lose power in the knee and within that quadricep muscle group. With a lot of the treatments these days and the surgical techniques and things that we use to repair the tendon, it's definitely a lot stronger a repair. Unfortunately, there's no magical way to kind of recoup a lot of that strength and power in the quadriceps muscles and the tendon itself. Again, with youth on his side, hopefully he will be able to overcome this. I think given that he's not a skilled position player like a receiver or a running back or a quarterback, then this definitely plays in his favor. And I don't think this will necessarily impact his draft status significantly, but I do think it may cause some teams to shy away that otherwise may not have. That makes sense. Next up, we have East Carolina cornerback Siobhan Revel. He had an ACL rupture and had it fixed by Dr. Daniel Cooper, who's based in Dallas. He's also the head team physician for the Cowboys. He actually had penned a letter to NFL teams, which was released in the media, that it says he expects Revel to be good for the start of the 2025 season and that he will be fully cleared for camp, but he will not yet be cleared for anything on his pro day prior to the draft. He's, as per Dr. Cooper, quote, is on schedule for a full return to play this summer. When he reports to an NFL team after the 2025 draft, he will be cleared for all strength and conditioning activities and individual running and cutting drills as a defensive back. He will not be cleared for participation with the team until training camp. This routine for the protocol after ACL reconstruction in football, any of your trainers or team physicians can contact me for further discussion as needed. And this is not unusual for physicians to pen letters and notes to the medical staff of NFL teams when a player is coming off of surgery in college and there's a question mark about their health or their status as we get close to camp. So this is not unusual to see this. The fact that it was actually put out in the media and made public is actually quite rare, but not unusual by any stretch of the imagination. And if the surgeon is confident and giving his clearance heading into preseason camp, then that's a good sign. Sounds like everything's going well. Next up is LSU linebacker Harold Perkins. He tore his ACL. He announced that he will be returning for his senior season, to Baton Rouge. The announcement came via Instagram account several weeks ago. So that's kind of shocking. You don't usually see that as you head into the draft, but with a lot of question marks going up around his health, surely after this injury and surgery, probably not a bad move to give yourself an extra year. Use college as kind of like that proving ground one more time. Get yourself right and healthy. He's an explosive pass rushing linebacker with exceptional tackling ability and closing speed. So he's going to need to really focus on getting himself ready. He's got apparently elite burst and quickness. He closes in on players rapidly. He's going to need to really get himself right before he makes the big leap into the NFL. So I don't necessarily disagree with this move. And this is probably going to play into his favor heading into next year, assuming everything with his recovery goes well and he has no major setbacks. Next up is Penn State safety Kevin Winston. He had a partial ACL tear, which happened in week 2 practice session last season. and he had surgery after he had attempted to play the following week. We can make a whole episode just on this scenario here, but in my 20 years of experience, it's very rare that you have a partial ACL tear that then does not cause major knee instability. So the odds are that this partial ACL tear was likely significant enough that it should have probably been addressed early and he not necessarily be allowed to play the following week. I don't know how that happened. Not blaming anybody or saying anything was done wrong, but it's definitely not a very common scenario. He is said to possibly be cleared to do some pre-draft drills by early March. I don't necessarily think that's has happened or did happen, nor should it have happened. He's got 2 years remaining of eligibility, including a previous medical redshirt, but still apparently decided to enter the draft this year. He stated that he is close to 100%. This is going back a couple weeks now, but will not test it out at the combine and will be ready to by the start of training camp. So we'll see. I don't know if he did the 40 at the Penn State Pro Day on March 28th, but he may have. He's an elite defender with uncanny ability to diagnose and attack run plays at the, I believe he's a linebacker. So we'll have to see whether or not he's able to bring this physical type of play to the NFL after this injury. Next up is Georgia defensive end Mikael Williams. He had an ankle injury. It was a second-degree ankle sprain in the season opener. It caused him to miss considerable amount of time, however, and then he re-injured it in the Sugar Bowl. However, at the combine, he did reveal that he was about 60% better on that ankle all season and essentially did not even practice prior to the Sugar Bowl. He did not participate at the combine. He was giving himself the offseason to get ready for his pro day. So, you can't blame him for that. He is a talented edge rusher with rare physical traits. Unfortunately, the injury in the opening game against Clemson hampered the rest of his season, but he did play through it, so you got to give him props for his toughness. Whether or not that was a smart move, we'll have to see. He's got game-changing tools when healthy, and if things are good, which I have no reason to believe they aren't, following an ankle sprain, not a fracture, then I think his draft stock will not necessarily change much at all. We're going to take a brief pause here, and then we will be back shortly. But we're going to hear another word from our sponsor, NeuroGuard Plus. Dr. Michael Hutchison has harnessed the latest in neuromuscular dentistry and impact technology to develop a mouthguard that does more than protect. It enhances. NeuroGuard Plus isn't just a mouthguard. By focusing on the jaw's physiological position, it provides an added layer of neuroprotection, significantly reducing the risk of sports-related neurological injuries. All athletes should be using a custom mouthguard designed to their bite position. NeuroGuard Plus was created as a means to maintain your physiological jaw position regardless of your bite. The appliance is designed to optimize your upper-lower jaw relationship to improve your strength, your balance, your oxygen intake, and drastically lower your chance of a concussion. Independent studies have shown that the NeuroGuard Plus will provide you with improvement to both upper and lower body strength. The same improvements were not present with a common mouthguard. Over 6,500 athletes have used the NeuroGuard Plus. Dr. Hutchison is happy to say that the amount of diagnosed concussions is 0.2%. The NeuroGuard Plus offers athletes, coaches, and parents an advantage to keep their players safe on the field. If you or your child actively participates in athletics, they need to be protected from the dangers of repetitive head trauma. Get your NeuroGuard Plus mouthguard today. Click on the link and use code ILPSports for 10% discount on your purchase. All right, a couple more players to get through here as we wind down this year's NFL draft injury analysis. I'm looking forward to this year's draft. A lot of things are so up in the air, especially when it comes to my New York Giants. What are they going to do with their number 3 pick? I don't know if it can get any worse, especially at the quarterback position. And they've got an interesting quarterback room that's developing this year. So we will see what happens on Thursday. I am anxiously awaiting the draft, and I hope you are too. Ohio State center Seth McLaughlin. He suffered a non-contact torn Achilles in November during practice. Terrible because he missed the remainder of the season. Typical time frame to return for this is usually about 9 months, which brings his clearance time to sometime in July. He was at the combine answering questions, and he stated that he has been informed by his surgeon and physical therapist that he should be ready by training camp. He's been rehabbing in Columbus at Ohio State. He apparently has exceptional football IQ when it comes to the offensive line, pickups, and stunts. He's a very quick processor once the snap is off, and he seamlessly transitions between the run and pass blocking scenarios. So let's hope that he can bounce back from this. He will lose power in that side, which at the offensive line position is very important. You need to be able to eccentrically load that Achilles in order to take on blockers and maintain your ground. So this could potentially drop him down on some draft boards, unfortunately. But if he's able to get this right and healthy, and he could potentially have a very long, successful career ahead of him despite this injury. So we will see what happens on draft day. Next up is Kentucky cornerback Maxwell Hairston. He played in only 7 games due to an unspecified shoulder injury. This dude has some lightning quick speed. He was clocked at 4.28 seconds on the second day of workouts in Indianapolis. And he didn't just impress scouts with his speed. He also had the second best vertical jump at his position at 39.5 inches and tied for third in the broad jump at 10 feet 9 inches. I was at the combine. I got to see him run. Dude is lightning quick. He's very lean, athletic-looking cornerback with ideal speed and fluidity in press coverage. Apparently, he incorporates a very good one-hand jam and can carry and turn and get down for those vertical routes and coverage. Plenty of speed with burst, good off coverage. Dude is very highly regarded, and he had a very productive 2023 season with 5 interceptions, and then wasn't targeted much because of that last year. So that's good though at that position. So I don't think any of this injury history with this shoulder, which was not really specific, will hamper his draft day stock. Not last, I should say. We got one more after this one, but Oklahoma State linebacker Nick Martin, he had a knee injury. He did well at the combine despite this. So it would seem as though he has overcome any issues concerning an in-season knee injury from last year. Texas tight end Gunnar Helm, I was actually at the combine and watched him roll his ankle right in front of me during the 40. After, unfortunately, it was a false start. And honestly, I was shocked that he continued after that. He ended up doing all the drills. His second 40 time was actually faster than the first after he rolled his ankle, which is kind of amazing. It seems like it was just a mild sprain, should be nothing serious. It did kind of swell up on him. It kind of prematurely ended his combine, unfortunately. But I don't think this will hurt his draft stock in the least. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my 2025 draft day analysis. Well, I should say pre-draft analysis. I hope you found that helpful. I encourage you to go back, listen to some of my takes, especially in particular the players who are coming off of injury in the NFL from last year, because before you know it, we'll be at training camp and there'll be a lot of questions surrounding those guys, as well as many other athletes as we head into training camp. And there'll be injuries that occurred during training camp as well as we get closer to the regular season start. So tune in to the Injured List podcast. Follow on social media at Injured List Pod on X, the Injured List podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Stay tuned for me making appearances on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on draft day. I will be doing a show with Dan Mater over there. And then that Sports Podcast Network, which I am a member of, we will be doing a post-draft show later this week and over the weekend. So please tune in for that. As always, everybody, stay healthy, stay active, and tune in. Thanks for joining me.